Welcome to Sunday Inspiration. And this week, our topic is on spiritual abuse and all that surrounds manipulation and control that can happen when a person puts themselves in the place of God and decides that they get to make decisions for people. And I'm here with Megan Moon. I'm so excited that she is here with me today. Megan and I met last year, and we actually met at a training class, and it wasn't too long. We hadn't been there too long together where we discovered that we shared some similar story in our backgrounds, where we both grew up in religious organizations that had a lot of manipulation and control. So welcome, Megan. Thank you for being here. And I'll just let you go ahead and introduce and say what you want to about you.
Hi, Vicki. Thank you for having me. I was actually really excited when you asked me to do this. I really haven't talked a lot in depth for quite some time. I think because a lot of these topics are hard. They bring up a lot of past emotions, and I'm the kind of person who really have always felt like I dealt with a lot of that, and I kind of tabled it. I shelved it. But as time goes on, different things and triggers come up, different situations, different emotions that definitely reminds me that there's still a lot there. There's still a lot of course, when you lose different members of your family, with that being something that they actually made a conscious choice to do, not because of, moving or death or anything like that, a sickness. When it's a conscious choice, you get reminded about that later on, and it kind of brings up old things. So I'm glad that you did ask me, and I'm more than willing to talk about different things that might help someone else deal with some of those emotions and feelings, or just connect with somebody and be relatable, be vulnerable with a lot of this, because a lot of people don't want to ever talk about it, and it definitely helps to continue to address things that come up over time.
Well, and I know it's so important because whether someone has experienced this themselves, or they have a family member or someone who has maybe gotten involved in some type of a religious group that's kind of sucked them away from who they typically were, it's not something a lot of people know how to deal with or to even recover from. I know as a young person, I was 15 when my family left the group that we were part of, and overnight we were shunned by everybody that I had been raised with. And we actually actively sought out, somebody to try to help us deal with it. And there really was nobody at that point in time that could help us recover. And so our journey unfolded as we, took our own responsibility for that recovery. But tell me a little bit, Megan, now about what did it look like for you growing up, and then the process of separating away from this group? And maybe as you're saying that, like, what are some of the key red flags that someone would watch for if they were saying, I don't know if this group that I'm part of is, a borderline cult or religiously
Yeah,
extreme? What would they watch for?
absolutely. Well, I was born into this religion. My parents were actually young adults, young parents, just out of college. I feel like my mom was looking to be a part of something. She was raised atheist. My father was raised Lutheran. And my mother was approached, and she just wanted some acceptance, I feel, from what I know from the past of different things. She said she wanted to be a part of something. She was longing to be a part of something, needed some more fulfillment and purpose. Also being raised the way she was without any religion, I'm sure like curiosity kind of was there. So they were baptized into this religion when my mom was actually pregnant with me. And so at this point, they have now been around this religion our entire lives, since we were little tiny children. We were raised with a very strict upbringing of, church 4 times a week, knocking on doors a couple times a week. We were inundated. It came first by all means at all times in every aspect of our life. We weren't allowed to be any part of any organizations or sports or groups or be associated with anyone outside of this religion. So I felt, as even a young child, I felt that was strange. That was odd. Why was this so, secret, compartmentalized, that you have to, be so careful. Everyone out there is so bad and they're going to be out to get you, to turn you away. And really what it was just kind of control, absolute control of who you cross paths with in everyday life. Keep it at an bare minimum. Go to school. That's it. Your association is to be only with these people. So that's just not a natural feeling as a child, to not want to play with your neighbors and your friends from school. And
Exactly.
I was very, very athletic, and I wasn't allowed to be myself as a young child. I was told not to be outgoing. I was told not to act independent. And that was just kind of my spirit. That's my personality. And it was just compressed. And I felt like the control there was based on fear. They're just so fearful of us, for some reason, going off, being led astray, being influenced by other people.
Or realizing that what they were telling you wasn't the only thing out there.
The only path in life.
Right.
So that was our upbringing. Completely immersed is the best word that I can say. My dad was one of the top people, without saying, what exactly it was. My mom that's all she did was volunteer 100 hours a month, and she never worked outside the home once we were little. So, I mean, it was complete immersion. And if you had free time, that's what you were to do, is do something more for it. So throughout high school, that was what was taught over and over and over. You do not go to college. Why would you ever? How silly,
Right.
And again, it was that bubble, that protection, that fear. You could never go to out of state or go to a dorm. You'd be around all those bad associates. Something's going to happen. So it was always like, it was like planted this fear, like something's going to happen. You're going to be taken away,
And what was the consequence for someone who did explore those things?
Really,
their advice.
Yeah, they're looked down upon. They're bad associates. They get labeled. So that constant labeling, we were told to be a model family, that everyone should want to be like you. So you need to act and conform into this mold. This is what you should be doing. This is what the model family looks like. It was very manipulative to be told this is the way. And if you're not, you're bad. It's just like, what?
Yeah, we were talking before we went live with the recording. We were talking about this particular thing, and I know I experienced it so much, and it's been where a lot of my healing has come from in my adult life, is this idea that if you didn't conform to the rules, which again, bear in mind, they wanted to have you believe that God, or whoever their version of God is, made those rules, and they were giving you God's rules. But if you disobeyed that, you were shamed at the very core of your being, because you were wrong, because you went against God,
Right.
not against this human who decided to interpret things for their own manipulation, control.
Right. And heaven forbid you question something.
Right.
Because my sister and I are both very inquisitive, outgoing, I would like to say smart, and, independent individuals. We would ask questions, and why, and well, what does that mean? And it was shut down. It's just shut down. Do not ask that. This is the way it is. And so again, back to that, like, control, fear, back and forth, back and forth. So then to me, I just be like, fine, I'll just roll with it. I'll just go with it. I don't agree with it. There's no other way though. It felt like there was no other way. This was it.
So I know a lot of what I experienced was feeling like my own personality, my own desires and curiosities were not allowed, and it made me feel very invisible and like I had no voice.
Mm-hmm.
And so is that how you felt in those situations?
Absolutely. I feel like it wasn't worth saying too much. We were talked to so much about disappointing our parents. And I had a very healthy respect for my parents, and I was especially close to my dad. And I felt like some of that manipulation was there because it was told, like, if you chose any other way, the disappointment was going to be so heavy that they couldn't take it. They couldn't take it if you did something, off the path,
Yeah.
and they
You
would
were
be
shaming them
so,
at the
yeah,
core.
so disappointed in you. The expectations were here always, always. And if, you kind of wavered from that, it was just wrangle it back in, get back on the path. What are you going to do? What are you going to do now? Now, what are you going to do? How are you going to do this different? Just very, very, heavy, very heavy as a young child, where I really fought off a lot of depression because I felt like I just was not being myself, or not, I couldn't just be the person that I felt inside.
Sure.
I I kind of used one thing, when I was a teenager. I actually developed an eating disorder because I felt I needed to control something, and it absolutely drove my mother insanely crazy because it was the only thing I could do to control something. I just felt like so much was taken away from me, you know. So that was definitely a struggle for a while there. The way it kind of backfired because they ignored it. So it's interesting.
Well, and you're exactly right. When we have so much taken away from us, we do look for what is within our control to to deal with. And I know in the organization that I grew up in, there was a lot of public humiliation to control people also, and a lot of reporting and suspicion of, if you weren't acting quite in alignment, someone else was going to see and they were going to tell, and then it was going to become this
Absolutely.
huge deal. And this public humiliation really was their tool to keep people in line.
I can relate to some of that as well. There was a lot of labeling, like I had mentioned before, being the bad associate, being the bad kid, or you can't, not only can't do anything with anybody else, but then it started getting segregated within the religion. Well, now you can't do anything with those people, but you can with them because they're doing everything
There's a
right.
hierarchy
Oh,
of
absolutely.
yes, so that we experienced as well. My
Label.
family was not in the we called it the upper crust. We were not the upper crust people. We were the middle crust people
Sure.
that got that got picked on. One of my vivid memories is I always wanted to have a slumber party as a child. A birthday party. Wanted to have my friends over, and my mom would never ever let me do that. And year after year, I would beg to have a slumber party, and she would say, "No, we can't do that." And I understand now that she was fearful that those other kids would, something wouldn't go well, and somebody would get mad that somebody acted in a certain way, and it would become one of those public humiliation
Sure.
experiences. So
Sure.
what led up to you opening your eyes maybe to decide to walk away?
I felt this is another thing that is a little bit common in the religion I was raised in is I was married very young because you are trying to get some sense of control of your own life.
Right.
That is extremely common um, because you just want to get out on your own and spread your own wings.
It's
So,
about the only thing you're allowed to do. You can't go to
right,
college. You can't
right.
have a
Well,
career
totally.
like other people. So you get married and raise babies.
Yeah, I mean, technically, and I did want to, be a young mom, and I did always want to be married and have kids, but it just obviously was very young, and so then it was kind of deciding our own path, like what are we going to take from the pieces of, my husband was also, of course, raised in the same religion because you can't, you know, go outside the religion, of course. And so what pieces did we want to take from it? Trying to become our own individuals as very young adults, young parents, what are we going to take from it? And we did find, honestly, we found a lot of value in the morals and guidelines. We didn't want that harshness with our family and, it's A or B, it's black or white. We kind of were more lenient with what we took from it. Our kids were involved in sports as much as possible, involved in community and volunteer work and other things outside of just this religion bubble. And that was important to us to show our kids that there was not only one way. Religion and spirituality doesn't have to look so in a box, black and white.
I
And so, yeah.
I just want to interject one thing. I think that's one of the red flags of a
Mhm.
extreme religion is if they say that this is the only way. This is, that no other way except for this one is right.
Right.
So I just wanted to
I
throw that in there.
absolutely agree with that. So we just found ourselves kind of interpreting what we wanted, not interpreting the religion itself, but interpreting what it looked like for our family. Um, Having just a little more normal upbringing of children and family
Mhm.
was important to us. Now my kids are both over 18 and but that's what it looked like to us is making sure they had good morals, but being honest and loving, kind, respectful people in the structure that we were taught it was from religion, but also allowing them to develop as a personality, allowing them to develop their own likes and interests, and encouraging them that it didn't have to be what we wanted. You need to do this. You should do this. Da, 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 da. That very militant structure kind of changed over time. So that's kind of how that looked like with our family. But I also really struggled with them sitting there and listening to the same doomed sermons that I grew up with,
Yeah.
and that your spirituality and religious feelings need to look like this. So I also really struggled as I was bringing them up through their teenage year, younger teenage years, and that with what that should look like.
So it bothered you to think of them repeatedly hearing the same messages that you grew up with.
Yes. And so I kind of had a wrestling with that in my mind, and that's my husband at the time and I ended up kind of growing apart. It really wasn't about anything else. Why, we grew apart. It was mainly based around this religion. We just had very different views. We'd grown up very young, grown up together, got married so young, and really developed in, started going in different paths. So much was because of I didn't agree with this religion. I didn't want to live my life like this. I didn't want my kids to have the same, you know, feelings that I did. And I just didn't connect with it anymore. My spirituality looked so different than that. So that kind of, you know, was really our separation at that point. So our kids
So
were young teenagers. Yeah.
so you not only lost family members, but it also caused a eventually divorce from your husband or
Technically,
separation.
technically really contributed to it majorly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there just there's no acceptance in that. If that's what your decision is, you're out, you're kicked out.
Right.
I mean, there
Yes.
isn't option
It's that
there.
black and white that you talked about. And that's for me. I was 15, like I said, when my family left, and I was fortunate that my entire family unit, except for one sister that was married, stuck together and left as a group. But we left because of a haircut, because you were supposed to, women were supposed to have long hair and it was supposed to look this certain way. Well, my sister had gone and got her haircut and the beautician had cut it up above her ears, and not something that she had asked her to do.
Oh, funny.
But and at that point in time, our family was so ready to leave. We were not agreeing with anything anymore. And so we knew it was either, again, a public humiliation situation over the haircut, or we just say, we're not going to discuss it with you. And to say we're not going to discuss it with you was that automatic termination. And then we actually didn't go to services the next Sunday morning, and Sunday night they actually voted us out, excommunicated us from the church, and we've never been back. That's been 30 some years, but I haven't seen my sister in that 30 some years, and she's had kids, and there, of course, aunts and uncles and all of this group of people that's missing now from our lives, from my kids' lives. My kids didn't even realize they had all these extended family members out there.
That's wild.
Yeah. So what helped you recover from this and go on to live a joyful, happy life?
I feel like it was really defining what spirituality and family meant to me. Again, I couldn't make that decision for my parents. They made that decision, and I can't do anything to change that. So for me, it was a lot of acceptance in separation of that guilt. Um, I I don't regret my decision. I don't want to live life where I'm not being authentic, and that's not how I was comfortable. I wasn't living an authentic life, and recognizing that that's okay. That's okay. It's my decision. It's my life. We have one
One
life.
wild, wonderful life to live.
Technically. And I wasn't going to allow someone else to tell me what that should look like for me. That's just not normal. I mean, That's not how we're made. We're made to make decisions consciously and to have our heart and soul behind our decisions. And I wasn't going to let somebody else decide that for me. And so I had to really look inside. It was very, very hard. It was very hard. I knew that it was a life-changing decision. It was that black and white. And for some families, it isn't. When I know my family, and that's exactly what it ended up being. It was, I will no longer have parents and some other extended family and some friends and things like that. Like, that world was going to look very different. And I had to dig deep to remind myself that I have to be true to my feelings and what I wanted and what spirituality looked like for me too. That I wasn't going to live my life being defined by what someone else's interpretation of religion and spirituality should look like for me.
Exactly. So what does spirituality look like for you today?
Well, I tell you, it's definitely not defined by four walls. To me, it's so much bigger. It can be complete quiet time, meditation. It's a lot of nature, gratitude, and appreciating what's around me, the people who are around me. What family means to me is very, very different than what I at one time thought it was. And that's all that's like a multitude of things that build spirituality to me, is who I connect with, who gives me energy, and who I can give energy to, how it's received and how it's given to me. Just appreciation for life, and the people and things that are around me. That's what it looks like. And we're part of a non-denominational that we find great messages in, but it does not have to be this structure. We don't have the judgment. I'm not around the manipulation, hypocrisy, and judgment that I have seen in organized religions. So that's what it looks like to me. It's definitely not the way I was raised.
So while we've been talking, if there's someone who's listening to us who has been silently admitting to themselves that, oh gosh, the situation I'm in sounds just like what these gals are talking about, how would you recommend them to move forward in evaluating what they want to do and how they want to live their life?
I guess that question right there, are they really living their life how they want to? I mean, really, really soul searching and asking yourself, are you comfortable? Are you happy? Are you fulfilled? Are you connecting with this? Are you finding the love and acceptance that you know you deserve and need? And if the answer is no, then something's wrong. Something's very wrong. If you're feeling in any way controlled, fearful, manipulation, that is not religion or spirituality.
And that's not normal. That
It's
is not normal. So and I say that because when you've been immersed in that, that's all you know, and that is the only baseline that you know. So judgment, shame, blame, criticism are the absolute normal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really looking deep inside and asking yourself if that feels right. And we have an intuition and a gut feeling for a reason. Or I feel that we're given that to listen to.
Absolutely. And for me, when we talk about how spirituality looks today, I firmly believe that intuition is connected to that higher source and higher power that gives us guidance in our life. And so if that quiet little voice inside of you is saying something different than what the people around you are saying, I'd encourage you to listen to that voice.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So what about for someone who maybe got involved in some type of manipulative situation as an adult and then has stepped out and they're experiencing a lot of self-judgment and blame of, gosh, I should have seen that. I should have known better. What would you say to that person?
Well, we're only human. We all want to be part of something and, something bigger and be accepted and have contribution, whether it be giving it or receiving it. And that's only human. There's nothing wrong with having interest in different things that might have been what it seemed like. But if over time it's not, then, that is what it is. Things tend to reveal themselves over time for a reason. So if they found that they were part of that and they're kind of seeing the light, should I say, then let it happen, let it unfold. And again, going back to intuition and heart and energy, and just allow yourself to receive which way feels best, and go continue to go on that path.
When I left, of course, I was 15 when I left, and then got married very young because, again, was the only thing that I had been raised to know was the thing you did was get married young, and then ended up in a very toxic marriage situation. And when I left that marriage, I experienced a lot of that shame and guilt of, God, why didn't I see this sooner? Why couldn't have I seen it? And it really took some deep self-forgiveness and self-love for me to move past that, and also realizing that we are each doing the best that we can at the moment. And I think, like you said, there's a charismatic, when somebody feels something is missing in their life or they're seeking something, then charismatic, manipulative people can capitalize on that and prey upon people.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Well, Megan, is there any final words of wisdom or message that you would like to leave our audience with today?
I would say absolutely do not be afraid to be vulnerable and like look at those feelings from the past if this has been part of your past, and have some self-acceptance and love and forgiveness for yourself for, just being true and honest to your heart and your feelings and where you want your life to go, what you want it to look like. And if that's, you might have been part of one of these types of religions, just be honest with yourself. Is that really what you want for yourself, for your life? You know, again, life is short, valuable, and make sure that things are what you want in life. If not, look at it different, decide, make a decision. And there's so much support out there for people who, I understand that feeling, that deep feeling of, you know, I might lose some of the best people in my life, but there is a lot out there. There's a lot of support to have understanding on what that might look like for their future.
And I know from my own family's experience, we would not trade the freedom and the joy that we have in our lives today. We would not have traded that to keep the people in our lives that were lost. They made their choice. They chose to stay where they chose to stay, but the freedom that we gained by the choice that we made, forever opened up and changed our lives. And even raising my own kids today, I can't imagine raising them as I was raised. Their lives are so different. And
so being very true and honest to just what you said. Like, is that really what I want? I made the decision and I feel that's what's best for me and for my family.
Yeah. Very good. Well, thank you so much for being here today. And I really appreciate your willingness to share your story and your journey, because it's not always easy to share about these experiences. And so I appreciate you being on today to do that.
Thank you for asking me.
Well, thank you for being here today for Sunday Inspiration with Megan and I. And I hope that you've taken away something from our conversation today. And I want you to know, if you are experiencing a toxic religious environment, a toxic relationship, or if you know somebody that is, help is available. And it's one of the reasons I became a life coach, is to help other people through those transitions that I didn't necessarily have people to help me through. So if you know somebody who's in a tough situation, or it's you, please reach out. Send me an email at vicki@tslimits.com. Or obviously, if you're watching this on our Facebook Live, go ahead and send me a message through Facebook. But help is available, and it is possible to leave these toxic situations. It is possible to recover from them. It is possible to live a joyful life beyond measure. So thank you so much for being here, and have a great rest of your Sunday.